I spent 2 summers in Alaska doing contract work for a geological survey firm. Mostly grunt labor like hauling equipment, checking sensors, and compiling data into spreadsheets that no one would read. Not glamorous, but I liked the solitude. There were no cities and no traffic and no people to disrupt me. In 2021, we got assigned to the area around the Wrangell St. Elias Range. The job was simple on paper. Monitor a specific glacial mass that had been behaving, irregularly, they said. They did not elaborate. My boss said the ice depth was decreasing, but melt runoff was not increasing proportionally. The data did not add up. The glacier in question was unnamed on most maps. Locals called it Hunter's Drop. Supposedly, a prospector sled dog team had fallen into a hidden crevasse there in the 1930s. Never recovered, obviously. They said you could still hear the dog sometimes if you stood still long enough. Locals always say things like that. You get used to it. But Hunter's Drop was odd. For one thing, it did not feel right underfoot. You know how fresh snow and ice crunch when you step on it? It didn't. It felt, tamped or, compressed. Like walking on a snow-covered roof and not realizing it's hollow underneath until the echo changes. I noticed it on day 2 and mentioned it casually to a pilot ferrying us in. He didn't smile. You do not camp on that glacier, he said. Not if you've got sense. We camped on it anyway. My supervisor, Mara, was not superstitious. Neither was I at the time. We installed depth markers and thermal sensors on a 5-kilometer stretch. Our last check-in showed a loss of nearly 11 meters in vertical depth over 9 months. But there was minimal surface melting. No runoff paths, no flooding, no structural collapses. It was just thinner. As if someone had shaved it off from below. Night temperatures hovered around minus 12 degrees Celsius. That second night, I woke up to a low-frequency noise. I thought it was the wind, but it wasn't external. It was actually coming from below us, like a distant diesel engine idling beneath the ice, constant, steady, and low. Mara heard it too. We chalked it up to glacial movement because ice does shift all the time. Things like tension release and vibrations are all perfectly normal, but it didn't stop. It pulsed at intervals of 2 minutes on, 2 minutes off, not random. The next morning, one of our depth sensors had come loose and dropped into a vent. We thought it was sabotage at first. There were claw marks around the rim, deep gouges 8 to 10 inches apart, like something with massive hands had pulled the ice inward. No footprints and no debris. Mara took the photos. We sent a report to HQ. They told us to stay put and collect more data. Of course they did. That afternoon, we used a ground-penetrating radar to get a subsurface map. At 3 meters depth, the ice was normal, solid strata. At 10 meters, the returns got noisy. The image showed pockets, voids that should not have been there. One was directly beneath our camp, roughly 40 meters down, measuring about the size of a Greyhound bus. The GPR looped continuously every 4 hours. At midnight, the void had moved closer, 37 meters down now. It had also grown by nearly 6 feet. Mara thought it was a flaw in the calibration. I didn't. We argued. Then something hit the bottom of our camp trailer from underneath. Just once, a heavy, dull thunk, like a bowling ball dropped on the floor beneath us. I stepped outside into the cold with a flashlight. The air was absolutely still. Sound travels strangely on ice. Every crunch of my boots echoed for miles. No sign of movement. I walked out to where we'd lost the depth sensor and pointed my light into the hole. There was condensation on the inner rim of the ice, like breath fog on a mirror. I didn't say anything to Mara. She already looked exhausted. The next day, we relocated the trailer 30 meters east, away from the main void. As we packed up, I noticed something on the underside of the stabilizer jacks. Black residue, oily, like drilling fluid but thicker. It stained my gloves, smelled like rotten meat and metal. That night, I did not sleep. At 2:13 a.m., the camp shook, gently like a tremor, and then again, stronger. I grabbed my boots and flashlight and opened the trailer door. The snow outside was moving, not blowing but shifting. The snowpack rippled in slow, concentric rings, like something large and circular was moving deep below. Then it stopped. Then I heard the ice fall. It came from the original site, our first marker install. The sound was almost musical, like glass cracking, then dropping. but it was hollow, deeply hollow. It reminded me of a bell being struck underwater, the kind of noise you feel in your chest more than here. I went back to Mara and woke her up. She did not argue this time. We pulled up the latest GPR snapshot. The void was now 21 meters beneath us, and it wasn't the only one. 2 smaller voids had appeared on either side of it, like branching tunnels. The shape looked wrong too, not spherical, more like tapered cones pointing upward, like stalagmites forming in reverse. Whatever was creating the space was not just eating ice, it was replacing it with something else. That morning, Mara called HQ and demanded evac. They gave us 2 days. We never made it that far. I stepped out midday to check the sensor logs and saw something about 50 feet away that made me freeze. A figure, kneeling on the ice, no coat, no gear, no visible breath, just sitting there. I thought maybe it was a hallucination. I called out, but it didn't respond. Then it slid downward into the ice, and slid, like it was on an elevator made of clear jelly, disappearing straight down with no resistance, its face never turning. I sprinted back to the trailer and told Mara. She did not doubt me. We packed everything in under 10 minutes. As we loaded the last bin, the GPR beeped. New data. The voids were now 15 meters down. The pulsing noise from below was louder now, so loud the trailer was vibrating. As we drove the snowcat east toward the ridge, I looked back. The ice at our former camp shifted, cracked, then sank inward about a foot, like something massive had uncoiled beneath it. The wind kicked up, the ice sang again. We did not talk on the way out. Mara reported everything when we got to base. 3 days later, she went missing. They said that she walked out of the bunkhouse during the night in only a sweater and boots. They found her radio 10 miles from the glacier, covered in that black residue. She hadn't taken a vehicle. She'd gone on foot, straight back toward Hunter's Drop. We never got any updates after that. I moved to Alaska in 2019 to work as a wilderness medic for remote research teams. I'd always preferred open spaces and cold air over fluorescent lights and city noise. People out here did not ask many questions, which suited me fine. In February 2023, I was assigned to a glaciology camp near a shelf glacier, tucked off the Nebensa River basin. The name of the site was not listed on any topographic charts. The researchers just referred to it as Site C or the Sinker. That alone raised flags. There were 4 people at camp when I arrived. All of them had been there for over a month. 1 geologist, 2 climate researchers, and a contractor, an old school guy from Anchorage who ran equipment and kept to himself. I was just backup, supposed to monitor vitals, prep medevac if needed, and file daily check-ins. The moment I stepped off the chopper, something felt wrong. Not danger, just disorientation. I've been around glaciers before. You expect biting wind, creaks and groans, the white glare of sunlight on ice. This place did not have that. It was way too quiet. Wind died down the closer you got to the glacier face, like it was swallowing the sound. The others were standoffish, not unfriendly, just tired, which is understandable given the circumstances. They all looked like they had been sleeping badly. Dark circles around their eyes. They had lots of nervous, twitching habits. I figured it was just isolation stress. At dinner, the geologist, Dr. Resnick, told me they were tracking subsurface density loss at unprecedented levels. It's like watching a mountain disappear from the inside, he said. But where's the runoff? I asked. He did not answer right away. There is none, said Tessa, one of the climate researchers. That's why we are here. There's no melt and no pooling, no flow channels. The ice is going somewhere, but it's not turning into water. Later, while I was logging supplies in the equipment trailer, I found an old GPR map rolled up under the bunk. It showed the glacier's subsurface, light gray striations where I should be. But there were blank spaces, voids, starting 18 meters down and stretching deep, narrowing like roots. I asked Resnick all about it in the morning. He snatched the map out of my hands and told me not to snoop through archive data. It got colder than expected that third night, minus 41 degrees Celsius with wind chill. I checked the thermal logs. Something was off. The ambient temperature inside the glacier, recorded from deep probes, had risen by almost 6 degrees since the last cycle. The surface froze harder, but the inside was warming. That is when I started to hear it. Not voices or footsteps, it was a sound I could not describe. It came at night, around 4 a.m., low and intermittent, like a deep inhale from below. It wasn't rhythmic, it sounded like exertion, wet, muscular effort, followed by a silence. I asked the contractor, the wiry guy named Booth, if he had heard anything. He said, "You don't want to listen too close out here. This place remembers." Booth was the one who finally gave me the real name of the glacier. Tavlik Unek, Athabaskan for mouth that does not close. Resnick hated that kind of talk. "This isn't folklore," he snapped one morning. "It's thermal collapse, subglacial erosion, nothing else." He said that like he was trying to convince himself. 3 days later, we lost a drone. They were using modified subglacial skimmers, little remote subs tethered to spooled cable, capable of gliding into crevasses and tight ice tunnels. The one we lost had gone into a vertical shaft, 2 kilometers northeast of camp. We watched the feed live. The drone dipped through the narrow shaft, sides coated in strange black ice, slick like obsidian. The walls pulsed slightly, not optical illusion, actual movement, subtle contractions. Then it reached the chamber, huge, spherical. The camera froze briefly and the image flickered. Then something crossed the lens. Not clearly, but just a blur. A thick black structure that moved with intention. It coiled once across the field of view. Then the drone cut out. The tether yanked taut, snapped. Booth pulled it in manually. The cable came back sticky, like sap or mucus. We logged the event, labeled it structural collision, and moved on like we had a protocol for it. That night, Tessa tried to leave. She woke me up just before dawn, already packed, wearing full gear. She was shaking. Her eyes were red. "There's something under us," she whispered. "It's not growing, it's replacing itself. You get that? It's pushing the ice out." She took one of the snow machines and headed west, toward the river pass. Never radioed, never came back. 2 days later, a field sensor triggered half a mile away from camp. Booth and I took a sled to check it out. We found a depression in the ice, roughly 10 feet wide, 4 feet deep, perfectly round. No signs of melt or collapse, just gone, like a coin pressed into flash and removed. At the center of the depression was Tessa's scarf. It wasn't torn or frozen, it was folded, neatly and deliberately. Booth did not speak on the way back. Resnick called for an emergency evac. HQ denied it. Just gave us bullshit reasons like weather window is closing, no assets nearby. We were told to hunker down and wait for rotation in 8 days' time. 2 nights later, Booth shot himself. He left a note in his logbook, one line. "Don't look in the holes, they are looking back." That is when I decided to start my own logs, in case no one makes it out. I've been hearing the glacier breathing at night. That is the only word for it. Not wind, not pressure, breathing. It exhales through the crevasses, warm, moist air rising in gusts that smell like copper and rot. It fogs up the walls of the tent, but does not freeze. It leaves streaks. Resnick stopped sleeping. He sits outside the camp at night and watches the glacier. When I asked him what he was doing, he said waiting. For what? For it to open again. I heard footsteps near my tent. Wet, bare steps. I looked outside. There were prints in the frost. Human, but longer. Arched wrong. Toes pointing slightly outward, like hooves. And there was something else. They stopped 5 feet from the tent door. They didn't turn around. They just stopped and vanished, like whoever left them was taken straight downward. On the morning of the 6th day, Resnick was gone. I woke up to find his tent unzipped, inside coated in a thin layer of moisture like breath on glass. His coat was still hanging by the heater, boots at the entrance, laces untouched. There were the footprints again, same strange, stretched ones, but only one set this time, and they led into the glacier. Not across the ice or along the ridge, but into a small, fresh opening at the base of a nearby pressure ridge. It had not been there yesterday. A mouth in the snowpack, no bigger than a manhole, yawning black. No sign of struggle. I stared into that hole for a long time. I didn't go in. Not then. I marked the GPS and radioed HQ for the 4th time that week. Still, no response. I was not eating. I was down to 1 sleeping hour a night. The wind started to sound like whispers, not voices, but rhythmic patterns, murmuring, like language without words. On the 7th day, the generator went offline. I went to check it and found the control panel frozen from the inside. Not frost, Actual crystal growth behind the display glass, like it had bloomed outward through the wiring. The oil was clotted with a fibrous, black-green sludge that smelled metallic. I gave up trying to repair it. At that point, it wasn't about surviving, it was about witnessing. I knew deep in my chest that the glacier was not a glacier anymore, or maybe it never was. It had shape, weight, mass, but no lifespan, no erosion. It did not melt, it did not change, it only grew inward. Something was building itself underneath us. That night, I left the recorder running in my vestibule. 6 hours of silence. Then, somewhere around 4 a.m., a noise. Faint at first, a whine, almost electronic. Then wet, cracking sounds, like ice splitting, but not from pressure. Then the soft, rhythmic slap of something walking on flesh. At the end, a single, quiet voice. It was my voice. It said, "Come down." I didn't remember saying it. I'm not the type to sleep talk. I've worked trauma cases, seen what isolation does to the brain, but this was not hallucination. It wasn't psychosis, it was mimicry. I swear, it was real. Something had heard my voice and learned it, replayed it back through its own mouth. On the 8th day, I went into the hole. I left everything behind except a headlamp, a flare, and my radio. I did not expect to come back up. The tunnel descended in spirals, perfect spirals. They weren't natural, it wasn't erosion of any kind. They were carved and etched. There were no claw marks and no tool cuts. The walls were smooth and black with patches of frost clinging to them like lichen. My boots never touched the snow. Only ice, soft in places, slick and glistening in others. After 10 minutes of descent, my radio hissed to life. But it was just garbled speech I could not make out, and then static. I should have turned back, but I kept going. At around 200 meters down, the tunnel opened up into a chamber. Massive, too big to make sense beneath a glacier like this. It felt like standing in the atrium of some ancient cathedral, but the architecture was not human. The walls were curved and porous, shaped like overlapping ribs. The air shimmered like underwater light, but there was no heat, only pressure. At the far end of the chamber was a structure, a tower or maybe a grove, organic but symmetrical. Few stalks rising from the ground like clustered bone. At its center was an opening. Resnick was there, or something that wore his shape. He was not dressed for cold. He had bare skin, blackened feet that sunk halfway into the ice, like it was swallowing him whole. His eyes were wide open, his jaw was slack, and his arms were wrong, elongated, bent at the joints like a mantis, folded backward behind him like he was being held up by invisible strings. When I stepped closer, he moved. Not his whole body, just his head, tilting slightly, mouth twitching. I decided not to wait around. I just turned and ran. No footsteps chased me, no echo, just the sound of wet breathing behind me, getting louder the closer I got to the surface. I just remember falling face first into daylight, half blind, sobbing into the snow. I was found 2 days later by a supply crew, headed to a nearby airfield. They found me curled up, next to the remains of our tent site. Everything else was gone. No Resnick, no booth, no Site C, just a flat, pristine ice shelf where our camp used to be. They tested the ice beneath. Solid, they said. Nothing unusual. All data drives recovered from the wreckage showed standard logs. No anomalies, no images. My voice recorder was blank. It was wiped. I told them about the tunnels, the breathing, the shape in the ice. They sedated me. I spent 6 months in Anchorage under observation. Never diagnosed with anything. I was just labeled unreliable. Decompression psychosis, they called it. Sensory deprivation. Grief. They think I imagined it. But I still have the flare. Never lit it. Still in my pocket when they pulled me out. I think there are things in this world we still cannot explain. We don't know enough about our own planet or what lives beneath its surface. I am not fucking schizo. Hey, hope you've enjoyed the story so far. If you want to hear more, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment because it lets YouTube know you like the content and helps more people to see these videos. My next big goal for the channel is 100,000 subscribers, and as a celebration, I will be doing a Q&A video once we hit that goal. Thank you, and back to the stories. Been working in an amusement park for summer breaks. Park closes at 10 PM max, but as I'm in charge of the shop, I must close after everyone else has left the park, so I can easily still be there till midnight. We cannot ask people to leave. It's 11 p.m. I am now alone as fuck. Only staff guy left in here. A couple comes in. Sorry, we'll be quick. Take your time, please. They eventually leave. Proceed to close everything. It's past midnight now. Shop is closed. There is tracks on the side of it. We got a train that makes a tour of the park for people to visit. It's nice and cozy. Has to run along the track to go back to my locker. Pitch black as I shut off every light. Find my way with my phone. It barely shows me the way. Suddenly stop. There is someone else walking on these tracks. Walk a little, stop again. My face when it's walking on my exact tempo. Freeze. Try to hear someone. Then steps come closer. Start running to the lock. Don't look back. Grab my keys, backpack, and get in the car. What the fuck was that? Next morning, starting at 10 a.m. Co-worker tells me the park was robbed during the night. Tell him what I experienced. My face when these guys had hunter knives. My face when the guy behind me wanted to slice my throat to get rid of a potential witness. Work in a bookstore in a small town. Mix of new stuff and really cool old books. Rare/expensive items and display copies are kept in locked glass cases. That sort of shop. Co-workers report things being moved around when the shop is empty. Weird cold patches, flickering lights, the usual. Never experienced anything until inventory time my first year. Our boss has us shut the shop down for a few days midweek. Most of our customers come in on the weekends, and has us working in shifts overnight to get everything done as quickly as possible. Working my way through shelves at the back of the store at around 11 p.m. and see a little old lady walk past into the romance novels. What the fuck, we're closed. Even by normal shop hours, we would be closed. Hop up and follow her. Ma'am, excuse me, ma'am. Get around the shelf and she's not there. Weird, whatever. Someone will find her eventually. Go back to what I was doing. A few minutes pass and I am back to work when suddenly an icy cold, bony little hand taps me on the shoulder. Miss, I've been calling to you for a quarter of an hour now. I need help. Try to explain to the woman that the shop is closed and that we can't sell anything right now because we're doing inventory. Woman gets really annoyed and hands the book she's holding over to me. Bunch of really old paperback Harlequins. She hoofs off toward the front of the shop where my co-workers are doing their own sections. Get back to work. When we are leaving for the night a couple of hours later, mention old lady to my co-workers. No one else saw her. Boss was at the register by the door all night and she never came through. I am the only one who saw her. Boss has no idea who she could even have been. Spend few shifts really wary around the romance novel section. I had a friend whose grandpa fled Ireland after a falling out with the IRA or something. I don't know. I am totally clueless about the Irish trouble shit. The point is that his grandpa emigrated to the States and started a new life. The story was a bit of a family secret, and in the end, my friend's father never told my friend about it. This led to a very fucked up situation. My friend has just completed an undergrad degree. He decides he wants to take some time off and travel. He'd heard his dad talk about a specific little town in Ireland a few times, supposedly where his family was originally from. He decides to seek out this little town. Fast forward. Friend lands in the UK, rents a car, and sets out on his journey through the Irish countryside, the bonny banks of Loch Lomond. Friend arrives in town and is surprised at what he sees. It literally looks like two different historical eras staring at each other from opposite sides of the road. To his left, there is a sort of picturesque Ireland, small rustic buildings, old shops, a pub, and behind everything lies green fields and rolling hills. To his right, it's a completely different story, much more urban, McDonald's and strip centers and whatnot. Well, Janie Mac, but this looks strange. Friend parks the car and ventures into the old side of the road and enters the pub. There is one man inside alone, sitting, who instantly looks my friend up and down. Friend orders a beer and pays for it. As he's drinking, the man suddenly stands up and walks over to him. What's your name? My friend is surprised, but he tells him, your last name. The man's being really gruff, but my friend tells him, thinking there can be no harm. The man says, you're a dead man, and exits the pub. The bartender, who overheard the conversation, tells my friend he needs to leave. He repeats my friend's last name and says they are not allowed in here. Confused, friend drinks the last of his beer and exits the pub. Outside, an old man approaches my friend. "Hello there, Anon." The old man is dressed nicely, but has a large scar on his right cheek. Friend asks the old man how he knows his name. "I knew your dad." "Oh, this must be one of his Irish relatives." The old man puts his hands on my friend's arm and looks seriously at him. "You're in big trouble, boy. I can't protect you here. Get that car of yours and park it across the road, and don't leave until I tell you." After some back and forth, my friend decides to do as he says. He parks across the street in the McDonald's parking lot. From there, my friend sees that a group of young guys has gathered in front of the pub. They're watching him. Knock knock. It is old man knocking at the car window. My friend rolls it down. "I am going across the road," he says, "and those men will follow me. When they do, you go home and never come back here." The old man breaks out into a big smile suddenly and looks at my friend for a second. "You're all grown up now." The old man starts across the street. When he's on the other side, a group of guys notices him. The old man takes off running, and the guys hesitate for a second. They look at my friend, then they all go off chasing the old man. My friend floors it and drives back into North Island and spends the rest of his trip mainly exploring England. When he gets home, he asks his dad about his family in Ireland, and Dad finally tells him everything. He shows him some old photos, and there is a photo of one of my dad's uncles who never left Ireland. He's young, but he bears a striking resemblance to the old man my friend met. He has a large scar on his right cheek. He died in a scuffle when my friend was only a child. Be me, freelance writer and occasional photographer. Pick up a gig documenting a small town in Maine for a cultural feature piece. First night there, grab a beer at a local pub, mingle with the regulars. Hear about an unusual quirk of the town. Some laugh it off, others seem accustomed to it. Nearest building to my hotel is an old clock tower. At 12 midnight, I watch as the clock strikes the hour, but only hear the tolling about a minute later. Think it's odd, but figure it could be echo or delay. Dismiss it. Get a good night's rest. Following day, decide to sit by the park, observing and taking notes. Hear the distant sound of children's laughter. Look up, no one there. Little later, a bunch of kids storm the park, playing around. Connection clicks in my mind. Recall the delayed bell. Get lunch at local diner. Order a chicken sandwich and fries. Looks good, but the first bite tastes like it's been out for hours. Ask for another. Comes out looking just as appetizing, but tastes exactly the same. Decide to experiment. Order a coffee. Wait 5 minutes before taking a sip. It's still hot. Look stumped. Leave diner while waitress shoots confused looks. Over the course of the next few days, start testing this strange phenomena. Local candy shop. Buy a fresh caramel apple. Looks glossy and tempting, but it's hard and stale on the first bite. Drop a coin. Hear it hit the ground before it actually does. Call a friend back home. Phone conversations always get really weird. Sound seems to loop awkwardly. Document everything meticulously. On the last day, sit by the park, watching the leaves change colors, releasing my breath and hearing it a moment after. Out of sync. That is how I can best describe it, as if things are happening before they've actually happened, or vice versa. On my drive out of town, creepy sense of relief washes over me. Be me, 19-year-old French law student. Me and my GF decide to rent in a shitty part of town. Big house though. I fucking love the Cowboys and New Vegas, so I own an 1886 Navy. GF is anti-gun, but I think BP are cool because Django. Gun is loaded without strikers because she is scared it will go off. Almost never shoot my gun because I'm lazy, and I don't want to bother driving to a shooting range. Read on the news that some guy had their houses broken into. In the middle of the night, I hear a loud banging on the door. It's 2 guys, one Arab, one French, looking like police. Ask them what they want. They say they need to take a look at my house. Tell them to fuck off. It's way too late for a house search. 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. It's illegal for police to search your house. Well, some exceptions apply, of course. They start kicking at the door. Get the gun, load the strikers in full panic, and hide behind the couch. GF calls the police. She is crying while she does this. Can't flee because we are on the 3rd floor. The door breaks, and I shoot. Huge flash and an E sound. Tried to pull the trigger again, but can't single action, and adrenaline has stopped my brain from thinking straight. See, one of the guys is on the floor, the other one is running away. Wait 15 minutes behind the couch. Police arrive and investigate. The guy has a bullet right to the head and died on the spot. The police caught the other guy. I was arrested. They were fake cops and did their tricks on other people. I was sent to a judge 5 months later, and I proved my innocence in legitimate defense. We have since moved to a more quiet place. Still have the gun. Here it is.